Hello there, welcome to the channel. This is Nerd World Order, and today we're going to be looking at just a few of the worst, most vile, most disgusting human beings, allegedly, in my opinion, to have ever graced the earth. Now, I am going to narrow this field a little bit. We're actually talking serial killers, who, let's face it, it's a fascinating subject, but these people really are just pieces of human garbage. Every last single one of them. These are not necessarily the worst by body count, but they're some of the worst that I know of for things that they did to their victims and for their compulsions. So, in no order of ranking, because why would you rank serial killers? I see some people on this platform do that, and what the hell, dudes? You don't rank these people. They are rank. But with that said, let's get into what is admittedly still a fascinating story of some of these vile human beings. Let's start with Edmund Kemper, an American serial killer in the 1960s and 70s. He got life in prison for the 10 known victims that he had. He was sometimes known as the co-ed killer, which, I know the media likes to give these people cute little names, but there's nothing cute about that, really. This man is the very definition of mommy issues. He basically couldn't stand his own mother, and has even stated that if he just killed her first, and he did kill her, that in reality he might not have killed as many. And he did actually ultimately turn himself in and allow himself to be arrested. He's a huge human being as well, just as a side. He's absolutely gigantic as a man, highly intelligent, and an utter waste of oxygen. But allegedly in prison he's actually done quite a lot of good for other inmates, and also in general studies of serial killers and helping them along. Absolute monster. Let's move on. Gary Ridgway, another American serial killer. I am actually in this list going to poke at there's going to be quite a few Americans. That's not to say America has the worst or anything, it's just they're some of the best known. Gary Ridgway was otherwise known as the Green River Killer. He has 49 known victims, but that number is likely very higher, as is often with serial killers. Now, another little aside, to become a serial killer is not what people generally think. It is not just the number of people you have killed. Serial killer is a mindset. It's the desire and the compulsion to kill that you plan and execute what you want to do. It's not necessarily that you've killed 3 or more, which is what a lot of people tend to think it is. It's more you intend to carry on doing it. It wasn't a one-time deal. It wasn't a crime of passion. You didn't just, kill someone because they broke into your house or you caught them sleeping with your partner or something. It wasn't that. It's like you actively went out of your way to do it. This man was like that. He was a perfect chameleon, hid in the community as an everyday blue-collar guy, working, family, kids. It's likely his body count is actually substantially higher, and it's quite famous to say that actually Ted Bundy did actually attempt to assist in his capture, although it wasn't really to accomplish anything. But Ted Bundy did actually give suggestions to the police, things like he'd return to the sites of the bodies, things like that. I suppose one killer knows another. Although his information didn't directly lead to Ridgway's capture, it's something interesting, I suppose. Gary Ridgway in general, as I said, was a total other piece of garbage. I've seen interviews with family members and others where they've tried to get him to reveal the location of other bodies, but for complicated reasons about crossing state lines in America, if he was to admit to these other bodies or help them find them, he could then face further convictions, which could actually lead to him getting a death sentence, which currently he's managed to avoid actually being executed. Although he's so old now, oh well, he's going to die soon anyway. Next. This next one is on this list for sheer body count, but also for the betrayal that this man had, not only for his community, for his profession, and also just for the human condition. That is Harold Shipman. He was a doctor in Great Britain, and he killed a confirmed 248 people. That number has been occasionally put as much as double that, or even 3 times that number with potential for it to be higher. He wasn't particularly vicious like a lot of serial killers. He wasn't torturing his victims necessarily, but he did sit and watch them die. He was almost, and I stress the almost, considering himself an angel of mercy, and that is an extreme generalization. He basically targeted the elderly because they were easy victims, and he would give them lethal doses. They didn't necessarily suffer, but these were people that trusted him. Their families trusted him, and he utterly betrayed that trust in the most vile, disgusting way. He then unalived himself in order to avoid justice for his victims and actually having to face the consequences of his own actions. Not only a killer, but also a coward. Next, this is Lucy Letby. Well, we're in the vein of medical professionals betraying the trust of their community and their constituents. We have one of the most vile and sickening acts possibly ever committed. This woman killed babies. Lucy Letby. She was a nurse in, again, Great Britain. I have no words. I'm sorry, everyone, I suppose. Now, there are those that say that she's innocent, and I am not qualified to judge. I do know that she has been convicted of 7 murders of 7 babies and the attempted murder and injury of others. Her motivations are unclear, and quite frankly, as much as it would probably be useful to know them, it's a shame we don't have the death penalty here anymore for this woman. If she is guilty, and I stress the if because she has been convicted, and although again there are those that consider that she might actually be innocent, but I'm not one of those people. I'm not qualified to judge, so we'll slap a big allegedly on for the guilt of this particular person, as there's still a lot of contention around it. This is very recent. This was all the way through the 2000s that she was actually doing this, and only very recently arrested in the last few years and convicted to a very rare all-life term in the UK, which is basically life without the possibility of parole, to put it in like the television parlance that we're all used to hearing. So, piece of garbage, killed babies, don't care what happens to her. I was actually overjoyed when I heard some news that she'd been injured accidentally in prison, but it turned out to just be a rumour, and I thought, oh well, shame. Next, again, moving on with the child killers, we have Pedro Lopez, arguably the single worst serial killer in history, killed almost exclusively children, and that number is an actually unknown figure. It's potentially 300 plus. Now, there is no excuse for it, but he's one of the stereotypical, he had a bad childhood, he was abused, he was this, he was that. It's no excuse. A lot of people have sucky childhoods, a lot of people's lives suck, they don't go on to kill, especially children, and that's exactly what this monster went and did. But for some reason, they released him. However, for mysterious circumstances, I'm sure a lot of people just turned a random blind eye to back in 1999 when he was released, he mysteriously disappeared, and my suspicion is he allegedly may have befallen some of the families of his victims. Oh well! This man was an absolute monster. He was murdering across multiple countries in South America for many years before eventually being arrested, put in prison for about 20 years. He got out, but then in 1999, as I say, he disappeared, and that's about all we're going to say about it. I'm sure no one's looking too hard for him unless they really suspected he was still alive, in which case maybe they're looking for him, but he ain't alive, is he? Next, just because we mentioned him earlier, we're going to go with Ted Bundy. He's suspected of killing about 36 people, convicted of about 20. He's the definition of where society goes so wrong for the pretty. They think that pretty people can't do it. Lucy Letby is actually, she's actually really pretty. She is. She is an aesthetically pleasing woman. However, she killed babies. But society thinks that pretty people, for some reason, can get away with stuff, that they're less likely to be guilty. They don't need to. They're pretty. I mean, look at that guy that recently killed 2 women, and then there's all those campaigns saying, I could change him. It's like, so much for choose the bear. He is the bear. Not in the sense of that exact argument, but come on, people. The guy killed 2 women. He's a monster, and he was guilty of various other types of assaults upon women that, we can't say for algorithm purposes, but you know what I mean. That guy's a monster. Ted Bundy is exactly the same as him. Handsome, traditionally, and it made it very trusting. It was easy for him to get to his victims because people trusted him. He actually was also, again, a very highly intelligent man. He was heavily involved in politics. Not the kind of person you would immediately assume was a killer, but in fact, he was a serial killer, not just, again, a random killer. He was guilty of multiple crimes against, well, women, and generally was a piece of human garbage, but he was pretty, so he got away with it and people didn't necessarily suspect him. He was even able to sustain relatively normal relationships, although he did cheat on them prolifically. But, you know, that in and of itself is not an indicator that you're a killer. It's just an indicator you're a bit of a dick. But anyway, moving on. Israel Keyes. I've actually done a full video on this man before. He's a person that I've found quite interesting as a killer, mostly because of just how organized he was. And there was something just interesting about that. Not interesting in a, whoa, that's kind of cool kind of way, just kind of, it was unusual. I mean, this guy was unusually well thought out. His victims were totally random, but the planning went into it before actually going for them was unbelievable. Years in advance, in some cases, setting things up ready to go. He would have these sort of kill buckets, these sort of caches of weapons and cash and material. He would bury. He'd go away and come back years later and dig it up and then just go and kill someone random in the area, make them disappear, break into their house and kill them. He's got 3 known victims, the couriers and Samantha Koenig. It was the latter crime that actually ultimately got him caught because he killed someone that was near to his house. He acted on impulse rather than actually his usual MO of planning it out. He lived so far away from where his victims were that there was no tangible connection. America is a really big place. It's easy to disappear. It was very hard to trace him and actually connect him to any of the victims. It's why he got away with it for so long, and if he hadn't have acted so impulsively, it's possible he would have continued to get away with it. Again, highly intelligent, fascinating MO, monstrous human being. But that was Israel Keyes. Basically, it comes down to this. These people are all garbage. They all deserve to be in prison for the rest of their lives. And depending on where you sit on execution, maybe have their lives taken from them as well. Again, outside the scope of this video, that is something for you and your conscience, as whether or not you think that is a just way of dealing with these people or just an efficient way of dealing with them. Whatever you believe, that's up to you. These people are not to be idolized. They may be fascinating to study, to learn about, but ultimately they are the thing that you fear in the dark. As a species, we've evolved over eons of time. We've descended from warriors and hunters, and people like this exist in our society. But ultimately, as a species, we are served by effectively being the survivors of the people that basically chose to live and not to become monsters. People like this are not necessary for the evolution or survival of our species. Throughout history, as a race, we have found ways to survive in different niches around the world. A group of people, as an example of this. This is kind of how this sort of concept works. There's a rustling in the tall grass. How do you respond to it? Some people are going to run away. They're like, there's lions around here, I'm out of here. Now 9 out of 10 times, rustling in the grass is nothing. But one time, it's going to be a lion. If they learn to run every time, they survive it. You've got those people that'll go and investigate. Those people eventually are running straight into that lion. Other people ignore it, and eventually that lion's going to take them. Ultimately, we are descended from the ones that ran away. And there is no shame in that. If you're ever in trouble, or you're struggling with something, or you are finding it difficult, or you encounter someone that makes you uncomfortable, or generally is giving you an ick feeling, trust that instinct. We have honed it over eons. That feeling is telling you, this person, this thing, this situation, this animal is a threat to me, and there is no shame in running away, screaming for help at the top of your lungs, and in numbers there is safety. These people prey on the fact that you will trust them because they're pretty, because they're charming, because you'll open your door to them, and once they've got that in, and once they're alone with you, it's never good to become a statistic. These people are monsters, and we should never forget that, and we should never forget their victims, of which there are far more than there are serial killers, unfortunately. But with that said, that is the end of this video. As I said, it's just a few people who are the utter pieces of human garbage and waste of our species. But we should remember them because, not because they deserve it, not because they want it to be remembered and we're giving them what they want. Their name should be forgotten as a piece of dirt in the wind. But if we don't learn from them, we can't stop the next one. So being aware of them and looking out for the danger is necessary. And again, never be afraid to run away and scream like a little girl. It's exactly what I would do. Or a little boy. I don't care. Just scream. Just run. Follow your instincts. They've evolved for a reason. With that said, we're at the end of this video. I thank you for watching. Like, share and subscribe, and bye bye.